looking for a Duramax truck, first things you want to decide are the type of body style that you're looking for. Older body style like this, or newer like this, or even newer. Another thing is if you want a dually or a 2500, depending on if you're going to be using it for towing, heavy stuff, for work, you probably want a 2500. The other thing is the size of the cab. If you want a full cab at the back, single cab, or just the small LT cab like these two. The most important thing is deleting the emissions off of the truck or getting one that has already been deleted. That's the best thing that you can do for your diesel truck, and also that includes removing your EGR, straight piping it, or putting a straight through muffler in it when you straight pipe it if you want a muffler on it. And that would require putting a tune in it to bypass the computer, having the EGR and diesel particulate filter removed. This truck here used to have an EGR valve and emissions, and this truck came stock without any emissions on it. Came with a blown head gasket. This one did not. So that's another thing you gotta look for, is if you're prepared to rebuild the engine and redo the head gaskets. Either you're gonna hire somebody, pay $8,000. Best thing to do is take the entire engine out and reseal everything, all your gaskets for your oil pans, front and rear main seals, and then you know it's not going to leak, and it's pretty much a brand new engine after that. And there's other things and modifications you can do to make it a efficient power that the truck has. This, you've got to do some stuff to it to make it more powerful. This, you pretty much delete the emissions and put a straight exhaust. And when you get your tune done, you can put up to like 140 horsepower on top of that, this has only got 50 horsepower tune on it right now. Stock horsepower is plenty. And this has bigger wheels on it, so that kind of slows it down. This truck here, you can get like 100 horsepower tune is the maximum. That's kind of safe for it. And you want to do other things in the engine, such as air intake, bigger air intake to the turbo, and a boost valve. Main things when you're maintaining these diesels is, like any other vehicle, brake pads, your differential fluid, and transmission filter fluid, your engine oil and fluid, and your fuel filter as well. When you get one, that's always good to replace in any vehicle, is all those things, and only the brakes if you need it. Another thing is when you're getting one is if you want to do body work or not, or pay somebody to do the body work, or learn how to do all this stuff yourself by researching it on Google and YouTube. This one here has a pretty much decent looking body now. The back was all smashed up, the back bumper. I popped all the dents out and did some work to the rust above the wheel wells. This one had quite a bit more rust and damage. Got a new box on it. Rockers on both sides have to be done. This fender's been done, just has to be sanded. This fender here has to be done. It's cut out, but that's what it looked like. And you can just get a piece of sheet metal and learn how to use a MIG welder and start shaping and cutting. So that's just going to take your time. This engine here, all I did was remove the emissions on it and haven't done anything. No head gaskets. It had pretty low kilometers on it, under 300,000. So if you're going to get one with emissions, you probably want around that, unless you're prepared to rebuild the engine. If it has an engine knock or something like that, you might have to rebuild the entire or replace the bottom end of the engine. So if it's running good, this one had some transmission problems. It's just electrical issue I was able to take care of, so that was fine. The higher the kilometers, the more worn out it usually is. It was a company vehicle. This one here has almost 500,000 kilometers. Engine still ran when I got it. The guy told me he thinks the head gaskets were bad. Didn't matter to me. I told him I was taking the engine out anyways. So redid the entire engine, the head gaskets, all the seals, and the rest of the engine's very durable, and still piston rings are all tight and everything. So most of the time that's what would have to be done on a truck like this. And it was all stock exhaust, no tunes on it. So that's another thing to look for if you have a truck like that. Unless you know it is been done properly and the truck is still working properly, it could have some modifications like the ones that you might be doing, straight pipe exhaust, stuff like that. A lot of the times people are selling them because it needs a head gasket job done and the body starts getting worn out. So that can add up. You can get these trucks for sometimes around, this was like less than $2,000, this one. Or you can get them for like $3,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 for one that needs quite a bit of work, and then you start adding that amount of work up onto it. That's why you see them for like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, because you're putting a lot of time and money into it. Like the modifications done on this, just in the engine part and rear differential cover, exhaust, gaskets and stuff, you start spending over $4,000, $6,000 or something like that. Plus your labor, or if you hired somebody, you could get up to $10,000, $20,000 on the vehicle. But then you'd have a brand new, powerful truck, and powerful than most stock new gas vehicles, and very fuel efficient as well, both of them. So that's the one thing to consider for one like this. It's an LB7 engine in it, and this is an LMN engine in this one, and this one was around under $7,000, $6,000 to $7,000, and sometimes you can get them that price if they have problems like electrical problems, or again head gasket problems. I'd gotten one, it needed a whole rear end done, or bottom end done on the engine block, but that was the first time I rebuilt a Duramax engine, and it's not too hard if you're prepared to learn how to do it. You got to take your time and make sure you're doing everything correctly so you're not having to rip things open again. And it got a 6-inch lift on it and some 24 by 14-inch wheels with 33-inch tires on it. same thing, straight pipe, 5-inch exhaust all the way back, both of these trucks. And that's another thing, if you want to lift it or keep it lower like this, or just level it, or if you want to put wider wheels on, then you want to start doing your front end parts. So if you own the truck, you can slowly start customizing it to be the way that you want it. And the thing is, as well as power for daily driving, LB7 with 100 horsepower tuning, all the modifications I've listed, is plenty of power for being able to drive appropriately on roads. Sometimes you really can't drive any faster without getting in too much trouble or irritating people. And this one, it's got plenty of power. I use it for towing a boat most of the time in the summer, and it's got plenty of power. It can pull it like there's nothing there, and everything's stock except for the emissions deleted and all the other modifications I had mentioned as well. For towing, one like this is probably better. This one's good for towing too, but these ones are a bit more for racing around, towing sometimes, but they could also be used for towing, depending on what style you want. That's probably the most important thing. That's what the outside's gonna look like, and the interior. And that should answer a question a viewer had about the upkeep and what to look for when getting one of these trucks and owning one. It's power on demand, effortless getting around, so that's kind of handy with a diesel engine. It's Isuzu, the actual engine, the Duramax, so it's Japanese, it's reliable. It's the sort of engine that you're dealing with here. It's pretty much you're driving a Toyota. And the other thing is, whether you're looking at a Duramax or Cummins or other trucks, the Duramax is probably the most cost-effective way to get the most power, and just I find the body panels, the way it's built, is a bit more put together. The Cummins, the Dodges, can sometimes be a bit finicky, like the door handles can break, or they can rust out a bit easier sometimes. And the 12 valves, it takes quite a bit more money to get higher power, and the transmissions aren't as strong. They go quite a bit more torque at low speeds for towing, which is good, but overall the Allison transmissions in these are quite good. And the 24 valves is probably similar to the Duramax. You can put a tuner on it and start getting a lot more power, but again, the transmissions can get weak when they get used around, even if they're stock for towing and stuff like that. And the body panels and the interior, it's a bit different. These ones kind of seem a bit more comfortable. The suspension on them, it's usually spring suspension on the front on the Dodges, so it can be softer and kind of like you're driving a car. They turn on a dime as well. The power steering is very strong. These ones are kind of, if you have giant tires like that on it, don't expect to be able to turn the tires when it's not moving like you can on the smaller tires like this truck or on a Dodge. and then there's 7.3 liters. That's the only Ford that you'd want at a cost-effective way to get more power and not have to rebuild the engine. 6.4s are good, but same thing. Best thing is to take out the entire engine and do all the modifications that you should need to do, and doing your own research overall to learn about all of them. And they'll sound how they sound with a straight pipe exhaust. The turbo vane opens and closes on this, so it makes 2 different tones of sound sometimes. Same with this one. This one is a bit more growly sound, peppy, kind of like a big gas engine, like a sports car engine. The throttle response can be like right there with your foot. This one is a bit more like a diesel kind of feel. So that's another difference. And how to learn how to do all that stuff is just time and research, or asking people that you know, and finding a good supplier around you to get these parts as well, or asking people. And when you're getting them as well, is checking underneath the vehicles, looking for any leaks from your rear differential. There's wet marks on the actual parts or on the ground. Rear differential, the front of the engine, the transmission, and the transfer case as well. Checking all those, because those are added things that you have to consider to fix as well. Last thing you want is those things going dry when you're driving, having to replace the internal parts. So it's just easy to avoid those things by checking out your undercarriage. And usually asking the people who you're buying them from. Most people are pretty honest about the problems if you're kind of honest and straight up front, looking for those problems and not thinking that it's going to be a perfect truck, but sometimes it can get a perfect truck. So you can do all that stuff and look for lower priced ones, check them out. It's mostly messaging people the prices of the candidates you're looking for, the vehicles, and being prepared to pick that thing up right away with cash, and taking it kind of no questions asked. But it's good to know sometimes, if you're unsure, if you're doing this for the first time, that yeah, it needs head gasket and all this stuff, or the transmission's destroyed, you might not want something like that. And you could also spend a bit more money on one that's, you know, is kind of more well put together. So those are the things to look at, and the trade-offs. Over the long run, it's probably best is to educate yourself. So whether you're taking it to shop or not, you know what's being done, you know how the vehicle works that you're driving, and you feel a lot more confident about it. So overall, these versus a gas vehicle, gas truck like this one, this can be maybe more reliable, but you can make these so they're very reliable as well. If the engine ever doesn't start, it's usually your fuel filter housing. That's something that you want to replace when you get it, if it's all rusted up or hasn't been replaced, to prevent any leaks and air getting in your fuel lines. Also, your fuel lines, removing the old steel ones and just putting rubber ones, and removing the fuel cooler as well. So there's lots of different things and cost-effective ways of doing it, or you can spend more money doing this stuff as well. But kind of doing your own research is good too, if you want to do things differently. And there's tuners that are good to recommend, and having an EFI live controller, you can tune these vehicles yourself. It's not like you have to go to a shop, put it on a dyno and stuff like that, test it out. You can just get the controller, have the tune loaded on your computer over email after you purchase it, and uploading it onto your truck, and then you're all set to go, and you've done that all yourself. So that's really handy as well, and not hard to do. Good thing to take advantage of. I'm not gonna start advertising different companies, but it's good to ask people if you want to have recommendations of different companies to use. So that's pretty much everything, and that's what you can look for when you're buying a diesel truck. Most brand new ones don't have too much power, and if you drove one of these ones, you can make them a lot of power. So it's kind of up to what you're looking for, or if you want a brand new one and remove the emissions too, that's efficient. Just looking up ways to make the vehicle more reliable, more efficient by having more power and it not destroying itself as well.